Hello and welcome to another video. I'm Maz and today I'm in my usual location in Gloucester. And in today's video, I'll be trying out this BMW E93 335i. This car was kindly lent to me by my friend JC, who also owns the Mini that I previously driven, as well as another car that I'm planning on making content on. For that, you'll have to wait and see. A quick overview: the BMW E9X, as it's generally known as, was launched in 2005 with the E90 Saloon and later the E91 Touring. This was the first 3 Series to have a separate chassis code per variant. So previously the E46 in all its body shapes was just the E46, even its M variant. This is an E93 as it's the drop top variant with the metal folding roof, whereas the coupe would be known as the E92. Both of these cars were launched in 2006, a year after the launch of the E90 Saloon. But if you want the full lineage of the 3 Series history, click the link on the top right hand corner or in the link in the description down below for my E30 review. In that video I talk more about the general history of the 3 Series. Just like the other 3 Series in the lineup, this ranges from the entry-level 318, 316 in the case of the 4 doors, up to the range-topping 335i, which this one is. And above that is of course the M3, which deserves its own separate video. As I've mentioned, this is the convertible. This is the first of only 2 models in its lineage to have a metal folding roof, the other being the F33 Cabriolet. Now, I've already driven an F32 coupe with the same N55 engine as seen in this car. Once again, click on the top right hand corner of the screen or in the link in the description down below. We'll get back to the pros and cons of the metal folding roof later on. Interestingly, this car was supposed to be called the 4 Series, hence there's no longer a C in 330 Ci, or in this case a 335, and that also explains the difference in styling. As you can tell, if you've seen an E90, it looks completely different to this car. And later on, I'll talk about a design feature that has been dropped at the rear of this car, and eventually this car ceased production in 2013 to make way for the 4 Series. And of course the M3 equivalent was the last M3 2-door to have the M3 name. So here is the front of this BMW E93, and here is what the key looks like. Once again, it's the generic BMW fob that they had within this period. So unlock is the arrow, lock is the emblem, and then this is the boot. This is also an E93 LCI. LCI standing for Life Cycle Impulse, which is what BMW refer to their facelifted cars. This is also a 335i M Sport, which has this more aggressive looking sportier bumper. And being the 335i, it's also got the chrome slats included. The 320s will have the center slats discolored. So here's what the slats look like. Of course, being a BMW, the emblem is on the bonnet as opposed to the front. And these also come with the LED rings. The lower bumper is very reminiscent to the E46 M Sport, which I quite like the look of. And this facelift car has this little kink here on the headlights, which is again reminiscent of the E46 LCI. The bonnet, there's nothing much to disclose other than these very aggressive creases. Coming to the side, obviously this is an E93 and not an E92. Styling wise, it's very reminiscent to its predecessor and its successor. The wheels are 19-inch diamond cuts. They're twin 5-spokes. You can get smaller 18s, but me personally, I prefer these larger ones. Being a regular 3 Series, you could just get the indicator on the side. If this were to be an M3, you'd get an intake. These mirror covers are aftermarket. This section here is made to mimic the M3. We'll get back to the interior later on. Coming to the back, Not a bad design at all. Being a 335i, it's got the twin exhausts, one on each side. If this were to be a 320, you'd get an oval on the left. A 328i or a 330i would have twins on the left. But of course, this is a 335i, with M3s having quad exhausts and a completely different rear bumper. These taillights I'm not a big fan of. They're not bad looking at all, but I think the designer disregarded the signature L taillights and made them upside down. This LCI model does have some L's on the LED strips, and being a convertible, the high level brake light is relocated to the deck lid. Coming to the rear now, so press this button to release and pull on here to open. Of course, this is the roof in the boot. This is how much space you get, and of course you got a net here to keep loose items in. This is the downside of having the metal folding roof. If this were to be a soft top, far less space would be taken up by the roof. Interestingly, you got this handle here, so if you're being kidnapped, you just pull on this. Once again, there's the obligatory warning triangle. And to close the boot, you just hold on to this handle here on the center, and coming inside, here's what the interior looks like, exactly like the saloon and touring counterparts. And this particular car has the optional center screen. If you got an entry-level car, even on an M3, this would be flat. And where the iDrive dial is, that would have been an empty cubby. This car has seats in the back, so that means one thing. Okay, so to get in, you pull on this lever here. And then press and hold on this button, which looks like a window switch from the 90s, and simply step inside. That's me stood on the car. Sit down, pull this back, and then press this, and I fit perfectly fine. But that's with the roof open. I'm sure it will be trickier to get in with the roof closed, but generally speaking, I'm quite comfortable here. Obviously, if this seat was further forward, I would have more legroom. Headroom is obviously infinite due to the roof down, and you get a center armrest here. Actually, it's not an armrest, it's just a hidden cubby for some extra storage. In fact, this isn't even hinged. So let's put this back in. But there's some cubbies here, not sure what you're going to put in there. A pad here. I'm assuming this would have been an ashtray for certain models. And you get two vents. This particular car has the wood grain. And just like any other BMW, you got the cold hot override. You get two speakers here for your Harman Kardon sound system. There is leather extended onto the side, but not on the top. You get Isofix here, which drop down like this. And this particular car has the standard leather, which I forgot the name of in BMW's term. And you get nets behind the seats as well. And now the roof is up, and I'm glad to say headroom is still sufficient for me. Someone taller may struggle, a 6-footer for example. And the headlining in this convertible model is somewhat generous for what it is. And these two pins here are where you mount your wind deflectors. And one thing the cabriolet has that the coupe doesn't is that you can actually roll down the back windows. Unfortunately, the coupe E92, the rear windows are solid. Back to the boot, so this is what it looks like with the roof up. This here needs to be down when you plan on putting the roof down. So simply you just pull it back up and push it away, and now you can maximize your boot space. Back to the door. So once again, these door handles are chrome. This is probably one of the last cars to have chrome door handles, since pretty much everyone has moved to satin. Again, the cream and wood extends over here. You got an extra storage space here and a concealable one here. And of course, it's got the Harman Kardon sound system. Now coming inside, with the roof up, I feel very well cocooned. I remember in the MX-5 video, which there should be a link in the top right hand corner of the screen or in the link in the description down below on that video, I remember it still felt a bit nylon-y on the inside, but really that car is there for lightness and simplicity. But in this, as I mentioned, I still feel very much like I'm in a coupe. So here is my point of view. The seats in this sport version are very, very strong. The shoulder support is pretty much non-existent, and just like a Mercedes from the 90s, the headrest has this floating effect since it's mounted on the seatbelt bezel. Here's what it looks like on the driver's side. If this were to be a coupe, there would be a seatbelt butler coming out of there, but this convertible I think still looks good with this Mercedes SL-like solution. As I've mentioned, the interior is identical to the E90 on which it's based. That phone mount is actually sat on a cup holder which retracts from the... Here's what the other one looks like. Unfortunately, this period of BMW does not have the center console angled towards the driver. Luckily, they did bring it back on the later generations. This particular car has the automatic. Being a later car, the gear selector is also updated. The pre-facelift would have a more traditional looking gear selector as seen on the E46. Even the dial is slightly different. Being a convertible, you got this switch here, which I'll come back to later. And again, it's got a traditional handbrake, which I'm glad to say is the perfect size, and it does not take up too much space, and it does not look a bit too unfortunate. What is unfortunate is this very pointless phone cradle underneath the armrest, and that's the eject button for any phone you have there, and that's a little cubby there which in some models can be a cool box. You got your aux cable at the very back, and in here a 12-volt socket. Luckily this car has the HVAC system separate, as it should be. It's a dual zone climate control, so one for the driver and one for the passenger. Here's your fan speed, heated seats, both driver and passenger, front demister, rear demister, and which direction you want your air to go. Unlike a modern BMW where you have to go through the screen. Again, here's your signature hot and cold override for the aircon. DTC, that is your dynamic traction control, and this is your lock and unlock button. And here's your hazard. While it does have a glove box, unfortunately the handle is a bit of a stretch, but that being said, it is fairly generous. And you get another glove box for the driver, which is again dampened and fairly cavernous. This car was one of the last BMWs to have a separate slot for your key. So rather than just pressing this button here, you have to slot this in and then press the start button. Unfortunately, there are so many blank switches here. The only non-blank is the parking sensors. You also got your radio presets here, a CD player, since this car was originally conceived in 2006, and of course your eject button. Being a DCT 7-speed Getrag, you got your paddles here. Again, being a BMW from this period, the indicators self-center, so it's got the same issue as all the other BMWs from this period. Nice round dials. Whilst the previous car, the E46, had 4 dials, too big and too small, this one integrates the smaller dials underneath the bigger readers, so your fuel and your temperature are nestled below the rev counter and the speedometer, with a tiny screen in between. Speedo stops at a round number of 260 kph, which is actually 162, but we'll say 160 in this case. And being a 335, the red line goes all the way to 7,000. Steering wheel is nice and perforated. It's leather all round. This particular one is holding very well. It's still matte finished with a little bit of shininess on top. Let's turn on the ignition. So here's your temperature reader and your time. Here's the infotainment system, controlled by this dial here with a few shortcuts around it. So menu, here's your main menu. Very similar to the 4 Series that I've reviewed, but this is obviously its previous design, and it's great to see how far BMW have come with their infotainment system. Here's your sat nav, here's your options, and a general back button. So let's go back to menu. Again, everything is very easy to navigate through. And you got your trip computer on the side. This center screen here is for your temperature of your climate control, so nothing much to talk about. If I hover my finger here, as you can see, the presets show up, and that's just me touching the buttons and not actually pressing them. On the driver's side, you got this grab handle and your master switch, but on the passenger, strangely, you get a grab handle and nothing here. So the doors significantly mismatch. Overhead console, the nature of this being a convertible, you don't really get much options, just your center light and your dome lights and your SOS button here. And here's the vanity mirror, which also lights up, but the light is ever so slightly covered by the visor itself. So that's the exterior and interior done now, so let's see what this car is like to drive. So, seatbelt on. Ignition is already on, so press the start button once again. Windows down. Give it a rev. Just a little blip on the accelerator pedal and it really revs up to 3000. And again, that is a straight 6 for you. So windows back up, handbrake is already down, into drive, and off we go. So from first impressions already, the accelerator isn't as twitchy as on the 4 Series. There is a lot more weight onto it, and steering wheel also feels a lot more heavy. Not in a bad way, I quite like heavy steering. It's not too heavy. And again, I've mentioned it's got the very awkward to operate BMW indicators. The cruise control comes from a separate stalk down here. And if I straighten the wheel, there's no cancel tick sound since, as I've mentioned, it's already centered. One notable negative with this car already, the roof cannot be operated while on the move. You have to be stationary. Again, the straight 6 is very smooth. That's the benefit of having a straight 6 as opposed to a 2-litre 4-cylinder, as most of these cars here in Britain were 320i's. That's just the charger rattling. Again, general visibility is very good. I've always been a fan of how these seats look like on the SL from the 90s, the R129. In fact, if you are an R129 owner and would like your car featured, feel free to reach out. Not much stop-start here in Eastern Avenue today, but the traffic lights are still present. This particular car has EBC brakes, yellow stuff, and they definitely do the car a massive favour. And setting off, the car is very smooth. We'll get the roof down later on. Turning right. How does this car cope? It copes very well, and thanks to its weighty steering, I have a broader feel of where the front of the car is going. That's just this rattling. Speed bump. Does well. There is a sport button down here, which I'll get back to later on. In normal mode at least. The car does well. It is a little crashy, but it's not a big issue for myself. It is a bit hard when I went over half a speed bump. These speed bumps are actually the square ones, and they don't cover the entire width. Few undulations. It does shake a bit. If you are used to a Mercedes of the same caliber, so the C207, or in this case the A207 E-Class, the 2-door version with the C-Class underpinnings, that's probably a more viable option if you constantly drive on roads like this. But me personally, I can live with that. Here comes another speed bump. Let's see what it's like in sport. Pretty much the same. Sport actually just makes the accelerator a little more eager. So yes, over speed bumps this car is absolutely tolerable. I haven't really complained about the crashiness. If it's a concern to you, obviously you could get a non-M Sport, but with the non-M Sport you sort of lose too many other stuff, like the nice body kit and the nice wheels and the nice amenities inside. So an E-Coupe or an E-Cabriolet C207 might be more your type. The speedo in this car is definitely much more easier to read. The increments on the later car, the F chassis, were just too faint, but here there's a happy medium of having the thickness of each increment marked like on the E30, but also have the speedo start and finish at a perfectly round number. Bizarrely, on those older BMWs, the speedo would start from 10 as opposed to 0. This one perfectly starts at 0 and ends at 160, or 162 for being really pedantic. So let's see what it's like in the town centre. A bit busy since we're sort of edging to the end of the day. Just about, but there's still enough daylight. Maneuverability is still good. As I've mentioned, the steering is a bit on the weighty side, so if it is a bit too weighty, again, this car might not be the one for you. But I know Mercedes like to use lighter steering. Red light. It just turned red on me. On the move now. Lots of buses parked a bit oddly today, so luckily I can still corner very well. And I also like the little indentations you have on the spokes to help your thumb contour around the rim itself. Turning right. Once again, these indicators are a little funny. Fortunately, these maneuvers I'm doing are long enough to self-center. And thanks to the accelerator pedal that I keep saying in BMWs, because it's mounted at the bottom, I can get a much more thorough feel of how much input I'm putting in. Off we go. And turn. That was a very good sharp turn. So yeah, the bolsters were so strong, the upper shoulder supports weren't really needed. And bearing in mind this is the convertible that I'm driving, so more weight, and in the case of the roof down, less aerodynamic. So even in coupe form, this is great to drive. And of course this has the Getrag DCT. Some of the other models do come with a torque converter, the ZF 6-speed. I'm sure those will drive much better, but I'm surprised on how smooth this DCT is. And I think because this is a convertible, it's more like a boulevard cruiser, so if you are looking for one of these, you're probably better off with the automatic. Again, I keep hearing that BMW manuals are very notchy, and in the case of reverse you have to really push it in. So press the sport button. Not quite in the national speed limit just yet, but already, as you can see, it feels more like a twin clutch as it's more jerky on the reactions, and we might as well put the gear selector into sport as well. Very good road holding, and it feels more eager to set off. The chassis, like I said, despite being the convertible, feels very solid. Still in a 50 zone, so it can't really stretch its legs just yet. Okay, so making our way onto the national speed limit. The car is in sport mode, in its most sportiest mode, so sport button pressed, and gear selector into sport. 3, 2, 1, and an absolute hoop to put your foot down. Again, this is on a dual carriageway, so it's all 70 here. Let me just quickly put it back into drive and put into sport. Those EBC brakes are really doing well. Thanks to the seat bolsters, I'm perfectly upright. No need for wingback seats. And it's very confidence inspiring. Okay, so here we are at 70. And the car revs at 2,200 RPM, so very quiet when cruising down the dual carriageway or the motorway. So let's make a U-turn and see what it's like in manual mode. Now that the roof is down, let's get back on the road. Put this back into sport and obviously see what it's like in manual mode. Let's get back to the bypass. Even in residential speed limit, it makes a great noise and adds a lot of character. And once again, I just cannot credit the steering enough. So leaving the Brockworth Business Park now. Due to the nature of it being a DCT, shifts are pretty much instantaneous. Now currently in a 50 zone, so let's take it to the 70. Obviously you can just shift down here as well. Into the national speed limit, so sport. Especially with the roof down, it's an absolute experience to drive this car, especially with that N55 up front. So if you are considering on getting a E92, also consider an E93, because the convertible, despite its downsides of being heavier, less aerodynamic, and obviously it costs a bit more, I'd say it is worth the experience. So let's head back to the car park, and I need to enjoy this car a bit more and finalize this video. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed watching me try out this BMW 335i E93. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you are new, ring the bell to stay up to speed, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers!